this transition and take this. We are live this time for real. Hello,
Woo!
everybody. welcome to this beautiful day. Once again, a beautiful occasion to ramble a little bit, to enjoy chatting, and this time, not just myself. We have today an invitee that is Xenon. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, I'm Zenon. I'm currently in Japan. Hopefully so it's a little bit late my time. I'm going to try to remain not loopy to the best of my ability. And I'm very happy to be here and ramble.
Yeah, thank you for being here
Mm.
because it ended up taking some time to set the whole thing, but it ended up at the end of the day happening. That is the most beautiful thing of this.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here. It is on the let me check. It should be over here. Yes, it is pinned on the main comment, and we should have everything working properly. So I don't know, any further addition to do, or we
No, I
might as
think
well move to the.
no,
Okay.
it's all good. It's all good. Let's get rusty. Or what do the kids say this day? What do the kids say these days? I don't know. I don't know. I'm so out of the loop. Let's get it started.
Yeah, probably. Let's get started. I mean, but well, we have a long list of things, and more than anything else, it is it is very good to see that we have everything working in place. So we as it is shown on screen, we have the topics themselves. We have everything kind of already fleshed out. So, do you have anyone in particular you want to start with?
From the top, let's go from the top. We got basically fantasy racism. So I don't I don't know if this is like a thing that like anybody else cares about, but it's been kind of a topic recently. With things like Dungeons and Dragons, Star Trek, Star Wars, even though it's not really fantasy, but kind of uh, anime, really any sort of nerd media that takes place in worlds with other sentient beings besides human beings. There's a large reevaluation of whether or not, of how we ought to treat sentient non humans in fantasy worlds.
Um,
Yeah, do you play D&D or watch any fantasy, Lord of the Rings, stuff like that?
yeah, I mean, it is kind of a common theme, as you say. It is. I don't think there is any real media of that kind that in any way doesn't have it. Because if it isn't, in particular with races like those who are, what are they called, goblins, for example, or if it isn't a goblin, it is an orc. At the most common ones on those kind of fantasies, they always have, as you say, a kind of separation from the human beings that are normal.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Right. And historically, like with Tolkien and other Western fantasy, these non-human sentient creatures tended to be based at the time off uh, uh, human races that were kind of, I guess, alien to Tolkien and subsequent fantasy writers at the time. So, they would consider humans, other human races, so different that they might as well not be human. And so you have like the orcs who, in theory, were based
so,
on fantasy that's based off of this sort of late 19th, early 20th century fantasy. Then you are continuing or perpetuating that racism. And um, some of the things that have been sort of done to affect that are, for instance, one of the bigger things you'll see is like, D&D is like changing a lot of the language it uses to refer to like demon races and orcs, etc. or you'll see other fantasy projects, usually games, changing the way that not that these other races, other creatures are portrayed to sort of give them a bit more basically the same sort of morally equivalent to humans. Um,
Mhm.
and but in Japanese fantasy, which some of Japanese fantasy is a sort of branch off of Western J.R. Tolkien style fantasy. They don't really do that. They still sort of have the traditional idea that they're not human, so I don't have the same moral obligations to these creatures that I would to human creatures, right? And some people are not very happy about that. So I don't know if you've seen any of the sort of like, unproblematic washing that happens in in fantasy races recently, but there's been kind of a lot of it. And I personally like to put all my cards on the table here. I think it comes from a good place, but I think it's silly. I think it's misguided. I don't think that people who I don't know commit a genocide against some fantasy race in a game, necessarily want to cause any sort of racial harm in reality. I don't think we have evidence of that. I do think it's a little bit silly, but I kind of understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, from a kind of analytical point of view, you see that it is important to understand a character doesn't stop being a character, even if you take it into reality, because it is kind of hard to completely flesh out anything at all. Uh, to that deepness, yes, but at the same time, you cannot also avoid even more in fantasy, where, and even more, as you said before, one of the main examples, D&D, races are not only a thing because I want to have this color or I want to be this tall instead of being this short. They also play a role in parts of the fundamental abilities that some races themselves have. And on real life, it is completely different. Yes,
Yeah.
we anybody could get anywhere as long as they try, in a sense. Yes, but if in your settings you need to be, for example, an elden elf to be able to recite incredible spells, or you need to be a dwarf to be able to craft things, because if not, you do not have the passage, or at the very least the understanding of how the metal works function properly. Or if you are not an orc, you are not going to be able to carry 10 times your weight with easiness. It is completely different from reality. And you cannot separate those things, so to speak. You cannot think that, in a sense, in the fantasy, you can destroy the fantastical side of it. Because it is good, in a sense, to stop being so judgmental, let's say, about how one race interacts with another, but it also is a tool, and an incredible one at that, for settings themselves, so to speak, for a history. You, if it wasn't that, the kind of orcs that are born from the mud in the whole Lord of the Rings story were a crucial enemy for the humans and for the dwarves, it also wouldn't be, so to speak, so important for the whole sake of the dialogue itself, that they existed, and you wouldn't have, so to speak, a need to have them existing even on the story, because you relegate very crucial things that are placed for the sake of your own story to more minor things. And as we kind of have been saying, fantasy is created for the sake of being fantastical. If you want to go for a kind of historical route, or more closer to reality, you have other ways to do it. If you really think that it is bad to attach, so to speak, a fantastical race to something, you are kind of negating what is the point of fantasy itself. You can, as I said before, you cannot have it being so over dramatical over one race or another, but it also has that side of fantasy in which they exist for a clear reason.
Yeah, for a narrative reason, right? Like, like, um, I guess what if I play devil's advocate with myself, right? Like what
Mhm.
somebody might be saying is, why would you cultivate the idea that other sentient beings uh, can be are not um, um, are not do not have access, do not have the same rights as other sentient beings. Like, why would we have a world? Why would you create or cultivate a world in which sentience is universal, but rights are not, right? Because, in their mind, rights are connected to sentience. And I don't know if I would even agree with that basic premise, but I see why a person might say that, and they might say, "Oh, you're cultivating bad things in society by teaching people that it's okay to treat other sentient beings in a certain way." Now, I think that's a fundamentally misguided way to approach fiction in general. Fiction isn't a one-to-one mapping onto reality. You can explore things there that it would be horrible to explore in reality, but also, like you can't ascribe suffering. You can't ascribe growth. You can't ascribe really any of the things that we as real existing sentient beings in reality, we can't ascribe that to fictional beings, right? And so when we take that away, when we realize that fictional beings they are not subject to the same rights that we have as real beings because they are fictional, then a lot of these arguments don't hold water, right? Because you have to realize at the end of the day, they're not real, right? Um, but I'll give an example of something that happened just like last week or so, of a sort of controversy in the sort of a fantasy community. There's an anime out right now called Soul no Frieren. I rather enjoy it. It's about an elf who lives a long time, and in one of the most recent arcs, she uh, we, the viewer, go with her and her party, and we meet some demons, some mazoku. So literally, like translations of Japanese fantasy races is a little bit weird. They translate it as demon pretty universally, but mazoku literally means a race of magical beings. So like a human-like race that naturally can use magic, as opposed to like another magical fantasy race that cannot natively use magic, right? But in the Freudian universe, they are naturally the predators of human beings. So they act like human beings, they sound, the same as us and everything, but ultimately they always betray humans, and you know, they're dangerous to be around. They're dangerous pets. So the point of the arc is learning that just because they pretend to be like us, they are not exactly like us, and sometimes you just have to, protect yourself. Sometimes you have to exterminate someone who's trying to kill you, right? And a lot of people were made very uncomfortable by this arc because for them, the Mazoku are, um, sentient beings that deserve to be rehabilitated. But the moral of that arc is that they can't be, right? So some people felt like it was perpetuating racism, and I disagree, right? I think it's more like a Lovecraftian, like body snatcher kind of horror, right? Like, how scary would it be to see a person, to see what looks like a human being, but it's actually just, like a plant, it's actually just like, it has been genetically modified, by evolution or whatever to kill you, right? Like, I think that is terrifying, right? Like, you see someone who looks like a person, but they're not. They're actually some sort of body snatched alien, creature race that's going to murder you. That's a terrifying concept. I think there are ways to execute that in a very, interesting fashion. But there's a sort of philosophical divergence on whether or not it is ever okay to do that. Some people would say no. I disagree, but it's impact a lot. Enough people are saying no that fantasy creators, are taking note and changing sort of how fantasy is created.
Mhm. I mean, in a sense, as you kind of said it, you need to understand that the fantasy setting itself creates a reason as to why they cannot be taken as humans.
Yeah.
If you think that your fantasy, so to speak, story allows for every single one to be changed and to be kind of civilized, you are not completely understanding what fantasy means, or you are, so to speak, blurring in your own head what fantasy, or specifically that one fantasy you're reading, tries to go for. because, as you kind of explained, they are not human. Therefore, they might as well not be treated with the same ideas and same concepts that exist in a human existence, basically.
And so that that's kind of like the ultimate question is like, as a fictional writer, do you have a responsibility to recreate reality in fiction, down to our morals and our moral responsibilities to one another? Now, of course, I reject this notion. I don't think that we have any sort of responsibility to create happy fantasy worlds where everything works out in the end, and not all of fiction are morality tales, right? But
Mhm.
we may be in the minority on that on that belief spectrum.
No, I mean, it makes sense because a possibility doesn't mean a responsibility. You can, for example, on real life, you could see somebody that is alone, and if you do not think that it is your responsibility, the possibility is open, but do not take that as something that really is crucial for you to act on.
Yeah.
So it is literally the same. You need to set clear boundaries in that sense. Yes, I think.
I agree. I agree. I hope that the people out there listening can kind of sympathize with our point of view here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, more than anything else, it is a discussion on our personal views. So
Yeah.
understand this also doesn't try to be the outright truth. So if, as always, if you have also an idea in which you think what you are saying is wrong, you might as well, at the very least, to me, whenever you want, DM me and say, no, you're wrong. No problems. Debating is beautiful. So, yes,
Yeah.
that's it. Or do you have anything else to add there?
Not really, not really. I think this kind of wanders our way into the whole double-edged sword topic, and I was interested, like what your ideas were there.
Okay, well, in a sense, it is kind of what we have been talking or trying to weave it a little bit more. Think about
Mm,
it this way. We were on, we said, or we finished more correctly, with a responsibility is not the same as a possibility. In this
mm,
case, you could try to translate it as if you have the responsibility of doing something, it means also that, in a sense, you are giving out a piece of you, and if a possibility is open to you, it also might as well mean that are you, by ignoring that possibility, ignoring a possible responsibility? For example, because it is more profound in a sense. Think about it this way. Do you enjoy, for example, entertainment personally?
wait, do I enjoy internet? Wait, do I enjoy which?
Hmm? Entertainment in general.
Of course, who doesn't? What human being does not?
Okay, then assessing yourself, don't you think sometimes that as an individual you might be consuming more than what you really need or more than will really satisfy you, or on the most kind of exaggerated term, don't you feel sometimes that you ended up consuming more than what you really needed, and because of that you kind of have a bad idea or start having a bad view on yourself based on the idea that you end up consuming too much, for example, on that single idea of entertainment?
Mm. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, you can at any. I mean, of course. I think most people have sat through marathoning. I don't know, the latest Scott Pilgrim adaptation. You sit there for like 3 hours back to back, and you're like, I could have done something else with this time. I didn't need to sit on my couch and binge this entire series, but I did it. Yeah, I think that's a sort of a natural sort of thing that many people might feel.
Yeah, yeah. That is that is basically the idea here, because you realize sometimes that, or I think it doesn't really come from the realization itself in the moment, but rather when you go back in time, you see you are doing things, or you were doing things that really do not give you anything good, and only even more when you analyze them from the past. you kind of see that what you were doing was, in a sense, completely a waste. Because entertainment isn't the only thing that exists in this realm. It happens as painfully with almost anything that ends up being harmful to you.
Mm, mm,
Like,
mm.
do you do you kind of get what I am trying to say,
I
or
think
do you want
so.
to
I
another point
that
of view?
there's
Mhm.
the desire to sort of consume that which makes you happy can sometimes inadvertently lead to a form of despair. Partially
Mhm.
because we as humans, we that part of our brain, that little our hippocampus or whatever, sort of seeks that, excuse me, it seeks that pleasure out and doesn't really know when to stop, that could even go for things which are actually very useful for you. You might over meditate, you might, I don't know, eat too much kale. I don't know, even things that you think are otherwise pretty healthy.
Mhm. Mhm. Because in general, and even as you said, with things that are healthy, you could overdo it. Over meditation ends up simply bringing this nowadays common idea of mental fog. Eating too much, even if it is healthy, ends up kind of obviously bringing to you obesity. It happens on every single field of life.
Mm,
If you are not aware of how much you're doing things, they end up bringing a harm to you. And the idea was basically to kind of give it not only that view, because I think it also happens with the things that sometimes we do not enjoy. And that is also another side of that same idea, because isn't sometimes, for example, do you really, when you're doing it, enjoy physical exercise?
uh, not usually, to be honest. I mean, I guess some things are enjoyable in the process, but most of them not so much.
And after also finishing your routines of physical exercise, do you feel in the moment where you finish that your body is kind of great, or do you feel at the very least with more energy than when you started?
Mm, bodily, usually not. Usually, I feel pretty tired and I just want to go home and take a bath. But mentally, I feel like, yes, I did it. I did it. I did not want to do it, but I did it. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, yeah, because it is in those also same situations in which you realize that even the things that at first or in the moment seem horrible, so to speak, putting it in the more exaggerated way, also have their good side. Because, for example, physical exercise sometimes is not so easy to notice, sorry, how much it can really give you in the
Mm,
moment. But over the long run, you really see the effects and more than anything else, the real benefits of doing it. As a simple example, obviously, because I think as with every single thing, if you are working for an objective, sometimes you really need to get deep in things that are not enjoyable. But as long as you also have the capacity of bringing to yourself the awareness of this might be something that I enjoy, or this might be end up giving me a more enjoyable future, for example, because do you exercise for the benefit of the moment itself?
a lot of the things that I mean, that are good for you don't feel good in the moment. Um, that's true. So, and not just like physical exercise. That can kind of go for being like if you're harming yourself and then somebody who cares about you tells you in the moment, hey, you shouldn't do that. Probably hurts, probably sucks in the moment to hear that, but over time it was better for you. So that's another sort of like side of that.
Yeah, basically that is the idea. I think one needs to approach things and to kind of take a moment to see if what you're doing will really be something that you're going to enjoy in the moment and not regret, let's say like that, or if you're not going to enjoy in the moment but be happy that you did it afterwards, because it is present almost in everything that you do. I couldn't really find, I think unless you really are somebody who found their objective in life, I would say it is kind of hard to say. I completely enjoy, and I think there is no downside to the things that I am doing because almost every other thing in life goes by that kind of rule, you know?
Most things, yeah. Some things feel good in the moment. Like if you're really thirsty and then you have water, like that feels good in the moment. And if you drink too much of it, it can be harmful. Um,
Well,
but the
yeah, but
reverse is also true, and it's hard to like tell, I guess, sometimes which is which.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, I mean, for example, the most basic necessities are kind of, sorry for not saying it, obvious that they don't have a downside. I mean, because you decided to sleep, in a sense, you keep living. The body needs to sleep as equally as it needs to eat and to drink. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Nobody can say anything at all.
yeah. Kind of need to live to exist. Yeah, those are some. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, basically that was it. I think. If you have anything else to say, if not,
Not really. I think we've learned our lesson on that topic. But on that
mhm.
note, like what's something that you're uh doing, sort of cultivating slowly uh on your end that maybe doesn't feel good in the moment, but trying to get better at. I think for something I need to do is streaming. Like I need to streaming sometimes. Like if you're not streaming to a real audience, that can suck. But I need to I need to cultivate a streaming personality.
Well, yeah. Let me let me answer to what you said first, and then I give you my own answer.
Mhm.
And I think it always comes with the interest of seeing that you put your time, and because you ended up really cultivating it, you end up being more adapted to realizing it in the future. Because if, for example, if you are aware that because you do not stream, you will suck the first times that you stream,
Mm,
not that you will suck, but in the sense of how you perceive yourself, as as soon as you start working on that, you
mm,
will also start to lose that perception of yourself, because it comes more than anything else from the self realization of how much you are worth and how much you can really say, yeah, I enjoy this part, I enjoy doing it, I am more freely with my words, I have an easier time. So I think that is a way to say it. Mm, what do you think?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, okay.
No argument, no
And
arguments there.
yeah, I mean, on my personal side, I would say, yeah, it is kind of unavoidable to say it. I here, for example, I already kind of started doing streaming, and I cannot really say that I do not enjoy it. The part that ends up being the most hurtful in the moment is
Really?
sometimes because we're, yeah, yeah. I mean, I am doing something that I really enjoy, but
Mm,
it really comes from looking back to what I do, because we end up really spending like this whole week we ended up spending like how much? Probably almost 20 hours literally thinking and analyzing things, and it is, in a sense, as I said before, in the most exaggerated way, horrible to feel exhausted after literally being on the PC and talking. But when you look back and you see the seats and more than anything else, the capacities that you end up having, or well, in my case, the capacities that I end up having to be a little bit more clear with my ideas and to be a little bit more capable of analyzing things and blah blah blah, it feels great. And it feels really rewarding, even if in the moment, kind of as in doing gymnastics. In the moment it is tiring, but looking back to it, it feels great because you have that tool at your disposal. You know.
yeah, yeah, yes. But it is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you need always to face things happily, even if it is painful. The rewards themselves are more sweet than anything else. So,
Yeah. Well, it's a learning process. That's what being a human is. learning, and
Yeah.
until the days you can't learn anymore.
Well, I mean, as long as you try. But
Yeah, I mean, as long as you draw breath, you are capable of learning more things.
yeah, exactly. And that is, I think, as you kind of said, the beauty of life.
Yeah.
But okay, next topic. Are we
Yes.
ready for the next one? Okay,
Ah, this is
and
a
is
controversial one here. Oh, oh my.
it
Uh, do
is
VTubers have a responsibility to discuss current events or to be in any sort of way politically active? So I think what most people think about here is like, is something political going on? Do VTubers have a responsibility to talk about that? But I mean it in a wide sense. Like, at some point over the course of a VTuber's career, should they have a donathon where they raise money for a charity? Should VTubers have a responsibility to call out some sort of social issue like animal abuse or anything? Or should VTubers feel completely free from ever engaging in the real world in a normative fashion? What's your opinion on that?
well, I mean, seeing it from that perspective, it feels kind of hard to really say it properly. But I think it this way: the way in which you engage with Vtubing really defines how you are going to do it. There is no real, aside from it, it is kind of harsh to say that the real responsibility is always to try and to do good to others. But aside from the donaton, the best example that you gave of raising money for a real important cause, aside from that, if you yourself as the individual who is trying to realize, not to realize, to start your between career, feel like the world is already so surrounded and so submerged in politics, I don't think there should be a real obligation,
Yeah.
even more because you are doing it for a passion desire, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if you're doing it professionally, I don't think you should, you know, feel obligated. I mean, obviously, if you feel passionate about something in real life, I don't think, the opposite argument, right? That like you should never bring up politics, you should never bring this kind of stuff up. I don't think that's fair either. I think if you do really feel strongly about something, um, you should. Like you can raise money for a shelter, bring awareness to a cause. Feel free to do that. But you should also, not everybody has the bandwidth or the capacity for that all the time. And I think know your audience, know what you want to do as a performer, and bring to the table that which is important to you. And I think there's basically three sides to the argument, right? One is like the people who feel like, I have a platform. I should do something with this platform. People are listening to me. I should be responsible and say something about a thing that I care about, right? And I get that. I get that. I think for some people, there is a dimension of virtue signaling where they want other people to think that they are a good person. And so for brownie points, they may mention a political situation that they don't actually have any knowledge of or interest in, just to let people know that they're, good people. That I don't approve of course. If you're going to have, if you're going to participate in like, Israel Palestine or a personal issue like child abuse or animal abuse or whatever, be knowledgeable, be sincere, right? If you're going to have a political stance. But the opposite end of that is that some people don't want to hear about it ever. Like some audiences just are like, I don't come to cute anime girl on Twitch playing video games. I don't come here to hear your political opinion. Shut up. I don't want to hear it. There are some people out there who believe that. I think that's a bit entitled. I don't feel like you should feel that way either. Like if you like a particular VTuber, listen to what they have to say, even if you don't agree with them. Hear them out, right? I think that's there's sort of like a responsibility on both ends, and it can be difficult to navigate, because a lot of VTubers are young, they don't really know what they're doing, but it's a tricky sort of thing to navigate.
Well, I mean, the, as you said, there are two perspectives. Let me go to the first one that you talk. If you are going to talk about things, it is kind of obvious and even more in a place in which you're going to get, no matter what you do, criticize every single time. You should be, at the very least, knowledgeable about the things that you talk about. Because even more, if you do not want to get such a harsh critique and such a, so to speak, destroying and completely humiliating response from those who really know what they are talking about, you shouldn't delve in topics only, as you said, to gain points in a ladder that doesn't really signify anything at all. But it is also true, or well, no, it is the other thing basically. If you are a VTuber, you kind of cultivate your own audience in the ways that you want. And those who are outside of your audience, it isn't that you should not air your opinion, but you shouldn't attack anybody with your opinion, rather.
Yeah.
Because if you think that it is okay for VTubers to not even try to talk about politics, it is one thing. Now, if you get the whole horde already an attack in the US because why anime girl is talking about politics? Shut up! No, that is different. That I mean, everybody has their desires and everybody has their interests. You shouldn't really try to force people to change because what do you see or what do you think is proper, even more in a place like this one where everybody is free to do whatever they want. You want to make a certain kind of ambient. You and your, so to speak, in a more aggressive manner, you VTubers can do whatever they want and you want, but you shouldn't try to forcefully change others. The
Yeah.
same as kind of the opposite. If you like to not even talk about politics, there shouldn't be a need to address things if you really do not feel like it. Nothing is really going to be destroyed because you didn't do it.
That's a really good point, right? As VTubers, our ability is limited, right? To make these sort of changes in the world, and if you feel like you want to participate in a way in whatever your cause is, you don't necessarily have to do it on a soapbox, right? You can do it privately. You can raise money in a donathon or whatever, and then privately donate to the cause of your choice, right? Being politically active does not necessarily mean creating political theater. And you need to think about the purpose of why you're engaging in the kind of political activism that you're engaging in. So like I'm very politically active, but I don't talk about it online, right? Not on my VTuber account because that's not what people come to my account for, right? I've donated, to uh conflict participants, shall we say, recently, but I'm not going to talk about that because I don't really feel like that's what I need to be doing now. Anybody who knows me knows what my political beliefs are, I think, but um, I don't feel like I'd have a very small audience, and I feel like what I can do, that my energy is best spent talking to people who disagree with me about this. It just makes both of us angry, right? So I think probably the best way to engage in it, that's from the betterment of my own personal mental health and for the entertainment of my audience, is to be politically active in a way that is beneficial to my cause, myself, and my audience. And I think that's kind of a good heuristic to go by.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a joke before really responding. Kind of hate content also is watched. People really likes also to see people one another being insulted. So if you really feel like going for it, no real need to stop yourself. But now for real, it is always also important to know that you are always have the possibility of creating the things that you want, even more in a place like this, where, as we said before, if you do not want to talk about politics, no real need, and if you feel like doing it, your audience will also converge with you, because nobody is really obligated to follow and to hear whatever you have to say, because it is as simple as clicking off of it. It it will always also carry the potential of those who do not like what you are doing, criticizing you, but it exists and no matter what you do. So if you really feel, as we kind of said before, if you really think it is beneficial for you, perfect. And if you think it will harm your image, no real necessity to engage on that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You can be as active as is appropriate to the situation, and
Mhm.
really think deeply about why you're getting involved with that. But on the other side of that issue is that I do think that we as consumers, we as viewers, do need to sort of think about what our relationship is with the cute anime girl on the screen, right? Like I do think that some viewers have, and this is not to like go out there like criticize VTuber fans. I consider myself one of myself, but I do think that there
Mhm.
is sort of a dimension to the fandom who like the idea of control. And this isn't just VTubing fans. This is just like streaming fans in general. People who like the
Mhm.
idea of they go to this particular content creator and they want a very specific thing, and maybe they donate money to like for example in PC streamers. You donate money and they do exactly what you ask them to do, or you donate it to a Twitch streamer and they have the reaction that you expect from them. And I think that there is some level of control and entitlement to some fans who, they just don't want to ever see, their anime waifu on the screen say something they disagree with, because, that's not why I'm here, right? You would be nowhere if I was not here to watch you kind of mentality. And that some of that is kind of the nature of being a streamer, of being sort of an idol style streamer, especially. I think that that's going to come with the territory, but we should, try to cultivate, I think, a good audience of people who are going to be who come here to watch us for our ideas and for us to freely be ourselves and not just like a particular narrow character.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes more from the personal side. You need to be aware that people, even more when they have the sense of power, they will try to exert it as much as they can on you, and even more to see how much they can push their boundaries into you, to see
Mm,
if they can make their VTuber act the ways that they want, if they can make their VTuber or their idol play the games that they want, because as you said before, entitlement comes with particular actions like a long, very long supporter, a very heavy, I won't use that word, a very heavy supporter that also gives you a lot of money. Basically, you need to realize that people will try to push you in those senses. And even more, if you end up, so to speak, giving up and accepting that they are going to affect you in those senses, you need to realize that it is happening. Because it is you who, at the end of the day, creates things and who makes this whole thing exist. If it weren't for the VTuber itself, the money wouldn't be anywhere else, so to speak.
yeah, I mean that's kind of comes with the territory, of when sort of intersection between content creation, for its own sake, and when you're financially dependent on that content creation. That is a different story, right? But it's we have to try our best to cultivate a good audience and be a good audience.
Yeah, yeah. It comes basically from that. You really need to pay attention to what you let in and what you also, in that sense, also what you allow. If you are in a community, you as another tier of that community, let happen. Because sometimes if you see that one individual is acting in one way, but nobody else is saying anything bad, it might be bad to say it at first, but simply pointing out the problems themselves is better than to keeping them to yourself. It is better to never explode, so to speak, than to end up going completely crazy because you were, so to speak, hoarding things that you saw. For example, and even more here, in a place in which it is so possible to do it.
Mm. I mean, what do you think is going to be in the future? For VTubers and VTubing audiences. Do you think we're going to have, more freedom over time or less on average?
Well, I mean, in general, it changes with what what the whole world of Vtubing ends up becoming. I mean, kind of hard to really say it. You need to create the things that you want.
Yeah.
And if you let, as we kind of said before, if you let others influence you that much, it will become a problem. But if you are aware that people will try to make you sometimes really do things that they particularly enjoy, you will also have the possibility of avoiding that particular problem. It isn't
Mm.
a, it is kind of the same as in work, You you will go to, what is it, black what black collar works or blue collar works.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
it
yeah.
depends on you.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, the ideal situation, right, is, uh, we what's it called? In all right, here's some politics for you. Get ready. In certain forms of political organizing thought, I won't use any specific names, there's an idea called prefiguration. And that's that, and it's a part of the idea of means ends unity. So that means that if you want to create a future, right, you don't, it's not going to happen magically, right? You have to start using the tools of that future today to create the future, right? If you want a future with more freedom, you have to create societies and organizations and structures that have more freedom today, so that that freedom gets reproduced through people interacting in that way. um, and so we can, in the future, have more freedom and not less, right? So certain political forms of thought believe that you have to just, force, you centralized power, force. And other forms of political thought don't believe that that is possible, right? We believe that if you want a certain kind of future, you have to build it using the tools of that future, right? You want a less oppressive future, you have to start using less oppression now. If you want a freer future, you have to start acting freely now. You can't wait until some distant part in the future and then start doing that freedom, right? So if we want the VTubing community to be, less toxic, less about, top down financial control kind of things, we have to start building those structures today. Build ways for VTubers to be financially able to support themselves without having to compromise their artistic vision. Build ways for us to associate with one another and not have to fear, massive repercussions from hate mobs and hate raids and, mass report bots and things like that. We need to start creating those kinds of associations with one another and with our communities, so that the future will be more in our favor, will be healthier, will be less toxic, because it's not going to happen on its own.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know if I could add anything to that. Uh, The only different way to say it, I think it is like this. The most basic idea is also like monkey does what monkey sees.
Mm,
If you want to create an ambient that works for you and that you really enjoy, you need to constantly be active working for that to happen. You cannot expect that, for example, in this case, if you see that somebody in the virtual world, let's say, is doing things that you do not enjoy, it doesn't mean, as we kind of talked before, that you need to go and chase that individual out. No, it only means that you need to be aware that the way in which you are going to say your opinion about it will have an impact.
yeah.
And you need to also say it, even if it is harsh sometimes. Because the most beautiful thing is whenever we talk, we have the possibility of really creating an argument that, even if it is hurtful by itself, doesn't hurt others because the words themselves are, so to speak, bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. A lot of people still need to learn that. That, yeah, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. But
Yeah,
one day.
yeah. But well, I mean, that is always the existing thing. You kind of going back to what we said. If we stop working on that, it might as well never happen. So it is also our own responsibility in that sense. But what that I think that is all for the topic, or do you have any other side of that?
No, I think we did it. I think we did it.
Okay, okay, perfect then. Then we have the final topic for today.
Yeah,
Finally,
indeed.
we reach the last topic, and that is what we sacrifice. So, do you have any basic ideas to what we're talking about here?
Not really. I think I have my own idea about that, but and it's kind of related to the last topic, with VTubing, but I could be way off. So I wanted to hear, what your initial ideas were.
Oh, but we might as well hear you. If you are very sure that you can give it out loud, no
Okay.
problems.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like there's nothing that comes to you in this world without having some sort of sacrifice, right? Everything requires some sort of sacrifice. Most good things anyway. Like a good relationship, you're gonna have to sacrifice some forms of your freedom. If you're gonna have a good job, it's gonna probably also your freedom. Like most things are gonna have some sort of sacrifice on your time or whatever. And VTubing is no different, right? And like as a VTuber, you have to kind of think about if you really, really want to do this kind of professionally, you got to sacrifice some stuff, right? You have to think about your audience. You have to think about your time. You have to think about, like balancing um, all the things that come in that are necessary for success. So, a lot of us start this just because it's fun. You have some ideas you want to do, but if you really want to go somewhere with it, right? Like I don't know if you know the VTuber Rune Banura. She's one of the VTubers who was the victim of a very vicious online attack. She finally got her account back recently. I've been supporting her for a very long time. I have her merch. I really love her content, but I really like her content about VTubing in general, and like how some of it, it sucks. Like some of it is like if you really really care about making content and stuff, it can't just be about your own freedom. It can't just be about, oh, I did this to have fun. I just want to have fun all the time. I mean, you can, but you're not going to grow that way. You can't both just have fun and growth, right? You have to have set schedules. You have to think about your YouTube thumbnails. You have to think about talking about trending topics and the news more. Like you do have to sacrifice a bit of what might have made this fun for you in the first place if you care about growth, right? And this is one area where a lot of people start VTubing and they get kind of get disillusioned really quickly because they start this because it's fun and they don't realize that to grow you have to sacrifice fun sometimes. And you have to decide if that's a sacrifice that is worth it to you.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, that's the whole point of it, and uh, not only the doing, but in general, because you always will need to spend time doing the things that you want. It kind of loops back to what we have been talking this whole stream. You need, if you want really something to happen, you will need to spend time creating it. And if you want, in this particular case, for example, as we're talking, to grow as a YouTuber, you really need to understand that it will not come out of nowhere. You, I mean, you are always also having in the background, so to speak, the reality of I might get lucky, but luck itself will not get you anywhere just because you got lucky one time. You
Oh
need
yeah.
always to put your time, and you always need to, so to speak, I'm always higher and always be constantly and constantly working for this, because it is in general, not in particular, or not only in VTubing, that when you do a show, you need to be aware that you are sacrificing time of your day for growing in that particular area. You are sacrificing time not only of your day inside the show itself, sometimes, for example, also on the get-togethers, on the whole show. What is it? Of days that are celebrated with your boss, time that you
Mhm.
spend with others, you always have to sacrifice something. And if it isn't that what you're sacrificing, it kind of even goes back to what we were talking before. For example, you think, okay, I will take a completely of the day, and I will not even touch social media, it is going to really be good for you because
Mm.
even more in this particular case, we're working for something, no? And if you're trying to create something good for you, why would you literally not do one of the most important sides of this? And why would you decide to not participate in something that is so crucial for your own, not benefit in the sense of, yeah, numbers, but benefit in the sense of the time that you put is the time that really gives you something back. Other people comes in a secondary or even in a tertiary way. Only your own time is what really gives you things back. And if you decide to focus on other things, those things are going to grow. But what you left behind and what you decided to ignore will also start to shrink, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, oh man, um, it's tough. It can be harsh medicine. It can be really
Oh
tough
yeah,
medicine. You know.
I mean, it, okay. Then if it is too tough, let me say like this: it also has the hope and it has the beauty of think about it this way. If you really put your time, you can get in the places that you want. You really need to work for it, but it will happen. And you really need to be focused and you really need to be not it also is other side of this, but you need to be convinced that the things that you're working on are going to be beneficial for you.
Oh,
But that whole sacrifice is also the most beautiful part of it because you know that you are doing it and you realize, and I think it comes also from the capacity of realizing how much you're advancing every single day. Because,
mm,
for example, as when you're taking care of your physical health, when you're doing exercise, it isn't on the exact moment that you finish that you notice how much it ended up giving to you. But it is over the weeks, over the months, over even years that you see yourself in the mirror and you are happy with what you end up becoming. It had another sacrifice behind of that. Yes, you might as well have sometimes not had the possibility of being with your friends. You sometimes didn't have the possibility of being on the couch watching a new series that just
yeah.
dropped. But the whole benefits that you end up getting from that particular sacrifice were worth it, you know? And in that sense, that is also why it is kind of harsh, but it gives you hope if you are able to see it from that other perspective, you know? Sorry if it was too depressing.
Yeah, I mean these things, they make sense logically, but they can be sometimes difficult uh to remember in the moment. It could be a little bit of a challenge there because, like, you know it in your mind, but it's hard to know it in your brain. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, it is a habit that you need to integrate, let's say. You know that you're using your time and you know that you're doing it for the sake of a higher aim, let's say. But if you lose sight of that, it also ends up giving into the possibility of one day you will, for example, if you every single time that you stream feel fear of that, one day the fear will end up winning because you're also not taking into account how much of a beauty you have already achieved. You know, that
Mm.
is also in this particular case, it comes more like from an idea that we might as well need to cherish constantly. You know,
That's so true. You just it's so true. Yeah, I mean, like, one of those situations where, again, like, very clear in my brain, um, harder in practice. You know,
oh
uh,
yeah,
and then it just takes time.
but it, sorry if it is too loopy. Even doing that sacrifice ends up giving you more than what you ever expected.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you end up not even having to pay attention anymore to that whole bad mouthing that you do to yourself in the future, you
Ah.
know?
No, that's true. That's true. That's very true. That's very true.
So I think that's it for the last topic, unless
No,
you have
I think that's
something.
all the topics.
Yeah.
I feel like we feel like we've learned some things today. Particularly, I think a lot of that stuff is kind of applied to VTubing, right? Like, I think pretty much a lot of our
Mhm.
we've done a lot of like meta discussions about this craft that we are doing right now and how we sort of see it today and the future and how it's going to develop.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is, in a sense, unavoidable to talk about the things that you are doing. So it obviously, as you said, loops back to video. Yes.
Hey, well, yeah. But yeah, of course, there's a lot kind of going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very good talk, so why not enjoy it? And, well, I think that's it for this whole stream. I
Yeah,
don't really have, in
not
my sense.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It's Saturday morning your time, or maybe early after, maybe it's
Yeah, yeah.
almost afternoon there. What are you gonna do with the rest of
Mhm.
your day? How are you gonna cultivate yourself?
Oh, yeah, I mean, today I think we have like one or two streams more yet. Um, so we need to go for that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
after this, the most instant thing will be to eat something because I am kind of hungry. So.
yeah. Well, yeah. That's cultivating. Definitely go cultivate.
Yeah.
You're 100%. Yeah. Yeah, I think from here I'm gonna go to bed. But it's been a pleasure hanging out. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, and I hope also that the possibility itself presents. I don't. I think the possibility was beautiful this time. So
Yeah,
the same thing
absolutely.
from my side. I hope it can happen once again. And well, only to say, I hope it isn't. It wasn't a bad time for me. I hope that
No, of
also.
course not. Of course not.
Mm,
Actually, this has worked out better than I thought it was going to. Like I learned how to use a whole new system, for this. So I think it worked
okay,
out quite well.
okay, perfect then. So well, that's it. Let us end this beautiful stream. As always, people also, thanks dear God watchers, lookers, whoever it was. Please take care of yourself, and that's it for today.